Flight boss, bitch, you know, for sure. You're not listening to the Mind of an Intense Moon. I am the Royal Archangel Uriel, and I'm here to carry out God duties and motherfucking responsibilities. Now I'm here to break down the actual occult knowledge behind Saturn. Now the actual occult knowledge behind Saturn. Now the letters within the occult practice of SA is referring to the Egyptian concept of the sun. So Sa is a correlation to, you know, the sun going through an actual transition. You know, it is Ra when it's experiencing daytime. It is Sa when it's experiencing set. So for the most part, here's the thing. When we start to talk about the aspect of Saturn, right? Anytime the sun going into an aspect of fall, or you know, PM, or going into midnight, aka winter. You know, micro will be, you know, the PM, or at night, or 8 a.m. midnight, you know, and then the actual macro will be the seasonal transitions of fall and goddammit, winter, which leads us into the PM, evening, and midnight. Now, here's the thing. When they was understanding their way of calculating the clock and things of that nature, based upon each sun transition, they was calling a different deity. So it wasn't necessarily Galileo or universal witchcraft practicing that religious people and scientists do today. So the sun itself was, each transition was a deity. Now, for the most part, when the sun do a full turn, we was tracking the sun, Horus, and made a scope for horoscope, to help us understand our clocks, how we was utilizing it in the Egyptian time. Now, for the most part, having the sun at a starting point and then seeing it do a revolution made us create a moon cycle, a mini moon mansion, conflating it with the term Saturn, the sun taking a full turn, or 360. And in a micro fashion, it takes it on a 7-day. And then here's the thing, throughout the time that we was tracking this, correlating it with the moon as a reflection, we realized that the point that we was drawing in the sand wasn't at the same exact starting point during the previous turn. So we had to correlate this based upon a 7-year cycle. Understand it? And then that's how we started to track the 7-week based upon the moon cycle. And the 7, 14, 21, 28 moon cycle in the chakra asterism decon phase of understanding the little minor devil in the detail sector, minutes, 6 seconds of the hour, Horus, scoping where the sun do a transition every 2 hours to move a house, which is a 360, which correlates to a 12-house system of us understanding this how the Egyptians was making a clock and understanding the virtues and principles of it, as above, so below. So when the sun take a full revolution, this is the Saturn. And for the most part, when we track this for 7 years, right, we have allowed a system, and the Jews have created a practice where the ones that came behind them to learn from the priests to see where does this go every 7 years. So there was a 7-year tracking of this practice, then a 14-year tracking of this practice, a 21-year practice of this practice, and a 28-year. Then during that 28-year, right, that's when the oral tradition came with the practice, and the ones who was making that uphold as far as the generation that was coming behind them to uphold that witch-wrong practice within the Vatican Church or whatever like that. This is what created the Jewish mysticism of the monad, or the 7-cycle circle that you be seeing in a lot of these occult books and things of that nature, right? And they like to correlate it with the 7th virtue principle, correlated with being Saturn, where this is just an aspect of them understanding a practice that they was doing, why the sun is not reaching the same point that it reached when it do a full circle, when we keep in track of these things. And based upon the energies that we're keeping track of, aka Jewish mysticism, Jewish philosopher mysticism, unknown. We was considering the unknown back in the day, the mind, and the mind going through the seasonal transitions, not just the trees and animals, also our mind. And for the most part, this was a deep-rooted science, where science and spirituality in their eyes was one thing to some degree. And then they learn how to treat y'all like fools and get y'all lost in light and satellites that's in the sky in today's time. But for the most part, that's another whole other video. But understanding the starting points of things, where it's just water playing out in different transitions and shit. Based upon this water cycle and them understanding Saturn is in the ring, that's where all that concept come from. The 7 virtues and principles come from. The moon mansions, and understanding Saturn is a concept of understanding a moon mansion on a more broader scale in that nature, for us to understand it, not just 7 days, but understand 7 years and things of that nature. And then for us to put a satellite within that position of body of water or current that we can't see as a light spectrum in space. There's no such thing as humans or a satellite, space shuttle, or a telescope being able to see anything that's a light spectrum in space if it's not a telescope itself in this motherfucker. Now, for the most part, here's the thing. Once we understand a full cycle and a full turn, this helps us understand that from a spiritual perspective and look at all the allegories that's being made by the very same people that run the world to create the operative perspectives from the speculative concept. The operative is the objects that they utilize, like telescopes and other motherfucking things to make you convinced into their spiritual way of them wanting y'all to live the way of the world in some way. So keep that in mind also. But yeah, this is the actual occult knowledge of Saturn. So anytime you hear a Kemet person that's explaining Saturn in a Galileo type of explanation, this is why Saturn have been discovered in the 1600s. But due to the fact of not understanding what's being practiced, this is why you don't understand the language, the linguistics, or the sign or symbolism, or the hieroglyphics, because you don't understand how these things is created in the first place, which a hieroglyphic is created based upon making a correspondence as above so below and seeing how things correlate. That creates a hieroglyphic. So a hieroglyphic ain't nothing but a collection of symbols and signs. If you don't know where those corresponding starting points at, this is another reason why you lost. Then when you try to develop a linguistic or a language off these things, this is a practice the shadow government are creating. So when you try to say we need to find an old language or something like that, you're trying to find the old language of the people who ruled y'all for you to be a slave to those old outdated thought forms and worldviews, which Egypt in totality, as far as the ritual and spell that they created that term and the thing behind it, as far as Kemet and all the energy, is just an allegory to slave. And I love y'all from the bottom of my heart.